Your journey has been an interesting one up to here. You've questioned so much more than those around you. You've even questioned yourself as to how you could have grown into these thoughts. Am I crazy? When did I begin to think differently? Why do people in general appear so limited in their thought process? Rest assured, you are not alone. The world is slowly waking up to what you already know inside, yet can't quite verbalize. Welcome to the Spiritual Dope Podcast. The show that answers the questions you never even knew to ask, but needed the answers to. Questions about you, this world, the people in it. Most importantly, how do I proceed now moving forward? We don't claim to have all the answers, but we sure do love living in the question. Time for another hit of Spiritual Dope with your host, Brandon Henley. Let's get right into today's episode.
One. Hey there, Spiritual Dope. I'm on here today with Sara Verre. She facilitates psychedelic retreats at Behold Retreats, where she holds space for guests and coaches them through their journey. With a background in coaching, transpersonal psychology, NLP, yoga, meditation and mindfulness, breathwork, and energy healing, she helps her guests looking to heal trauma and elevate their consciousness, not only on retreat, but in preparation and for integration of such experiences. Sara, thanks for being on today.
Oh, Brandon, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So look, Sara, I like to start these off with like the whole idea that I'm Spiritual Dope, that we're just like kind of vessels for spiritual energy, right? Like, you know, whatever's out there is kind of flowing through us, and typically, especially on this podcast, for the benefit of somebody else out there, right? Sara, it's not even about us, right? It's for the benefit of somebody else. And there's a message that's kind of coming through you today for that person. What's that message?
Yeah, the message is psychedelic experiences are absolutely beautiful and amazing journeys, and I believe that most people will benefit from them, but there is something overlooked greatly, and it is the preparation and the integration aspect, and that's what we do at Behold, and that's how I feel around the use of psychedelics, and that's what I want to share with the world.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I'll tell you what, if I go and I look at LinkedIn, Sara, and I look at like kind of where you've gone and what you've done, I gotta be honest, I don't see you landing here in psychedelic space, right? Let's talk a little bit about that journey, right? You know, because you've got like traditional education, you know, worked at, you know, some very traditional corporations, and now you're facilitating, you're doing all the things that like I think are super important in this space. You know, in your bio, right? You're doing, you know, the NLP, the mindfulness, the breath work, and energy healing. But like, how did you get there? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, it is a surprising transition for some people from the outside, for sure. I began my sort of, let's say, the spiritual mindfulness path quite young. I was maybe 13 or 14 when I started practicing yoga and meditation, and it was always a big part of my life. I've always been naturally sort of drawn to the spiritual elements of reality, and so I was also raised in a society in Toronto, in Canada, like a capitalist, work hard, play hard, finance city. And coming from this place where your job and your status and is your identity, I was just under the impression as a 17-year-old choosing my direction in life through university, that I had to go that path, that's what made sense. I was going to make money that way. I was going to be it was like a proud thing I could do for my family and for my friends, etc. So that's the path I took. And even though I always had this other side to me, that really was what drove me. And so I would start working. For example, I worked at American Express, which it was a fun job. I mean, I liked working with the people there, but I didn't connect at all with the actual work. And so I would always leave and I'd go traveling for a year. I'd come back, I'd get back into the corporate job, and then I would leave again for a year. And I would just do all sorts of things like study yoga and just get to know different ways of living and cultures. And I was always really drawn to healing modalities, natural healing modalities. And, you know, it was sort of a spiral of events and synchronicities. And I got to a stage in my life where I realized I was sort of living this life that I was always trying to escape from. I was always just trying to leave it and I was always looking for something. And it was through listening to this sort of inner calling of doing what I really love to do. I never thought I could make a career from yoga, for example. I was always told, like, this is impossible. Like, you're never gonna, be able to support yourself. The things that you hear from Western society a lot of the times. And so it was always something that I was going to do on the side, doing these types of healing modalities. So it just got to the point where I had to make a decision. Like, it was either go back into sales or marketing for the money, or go all in with the healing modalities. And I remember I had a conversation when this was like really heavy on my mind, and I was again traveling, avoiding to go back and face, getting the job again. And I was traveling in Colombia, and I ran into someone, and we had this conversation, and instantly he said to me, he's like, hey, like, why aren't you doing this for a living? You have this very trusting nature to you. You love yoga. You seem to love helping people. I would pay someone like you to come in and coach me on how to live a more mindful life, how to, align my body physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And I was like, wow, I never thought that someone would pay me to do that. And then it kind of just spiraled from there. And psychedelics have always been a big part of my life. And so that naturally fell into the flow of things. So.
Yeah, they're silly that way, aren't they? So I think it's pretty cool, right? And I'm loving what I'm hearing. You're doing what you were set up to do, right? You're doing what everybody has always done, right? Like, hey, this is what we do. This is how we get there. This is the life you live. And if you want to be really good in life, you need to have a lot of money. You need to put all this pressure on yourself to have a lot of money, and you need to rise in the ranks in this structure that you're like, I don't even know why I'm here.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? What am I doing here? Right. Something's not right. But I keep doing this thing that they keep telling me I'm supposed to be doing, and it's not getting any better.
Yeah. Right.
And each time, and then, look, I would leave too and come back. And I'm back again. Don't get me wrong. You leave and you're like, this feels pretty good. I'm pretty happy doing this, whatever this is. And then like, I was like, but you can't do that for the rest of your life. You're like, but I'm doing it now, so I don't get it. Like,
exactly.
What, right? What do you mean I can't? Because here I am doing it, and you're like, no, you can't. And so, like, you're like, okay, I'm back. I'm doing it. I'm grinding it out. And then, like, you're going through your journey, and somebody's like, but you could make money doing this thing that you love, and I, for one, would be willing to pay you for it, right? And so you're like, I don't know, you get to this point, and then are you like, fucking, I'm all in, or like, where does that transition come?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a leap of faith for sure. Because it had been, for me anyways, it was so many years built up with this like underlying fear that I wouldn't be able to live in this manner. And I would always be worried about money, or I'd always be, just not in a safe place, basically. And so the decision to go all in, again, was maybe help with psychedelics as well. I had it was my very first mushroom ceremony. I mean, I had recreationally used mushrooms since I was like 17. So I was very familiar with the mushroom, loved it. But when I really realized I wanted to get into this work specifically in the therapeutic context, I knew I had to experience the ceremonial mushroom experience. And wow, like that eradicated any fear, any doubts that I could ever have had to take on this path. It was basically like, you're an idiot, go now. Like, this is your calling. This is it. This is everything. You're going to succeed. You're going to do amazing things. Don't be scared. Go for it. And receiving this deep, profound knowledge and, like, I would say, like, wisdom that goes beyond anything in my mind that my mind wants to tell me, really was the final sort of push, like, go, just go. So I moved to Amsterdam, no job, no visa, no apart, like I just went. And of course, when you do that and it's right and you listen to these signs, I mean, the universe was screaming at me for years and I just wasn't listening. So I listened, and the day I got to Amsterdam, or the day after, I got the job at Behold Retreats. So it was just like, it couldn't have been better.
No, that's awesome. Right. And I think that, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. Like, if you're feeling this, and especially like, kind of in a mushroom or, therapeutic setting, like you're talking about, ceremonial, or like this thing that's resonating with you, like your whole body's like, go, right? Like when people talk about like, ringing the bell, like your whole body feels like a bell that's in tune, like the vibration and alignment to this thing, and like amplified sense. Right. You're like, it's not even like, can anybody hear that? You're like, you feel it with your whole body.
Yeah. It's more true than anything you've ever felt before, basically.
Right. And so, and then there's this piece, right? Like, you're like, again, you're like, I'm going to go jump into it. I'm going to go do this thing. It's 100% in alignment with who I am. It's kind of like, here's what I was put on this planet for. Here's what I'm here for. And like, you open doors in Amsterdam and the universe is like, pow.
There you go.
Right. Can you talk? So one of the things that, I definitely talk about before I did this podcast, I did a podcast called like the Prosperity Practice, leaning into like the law of attraction type of thing, but also just kind of letting go and letting something kind of be provided for you, right? Versus you putting, I know you guys, and it's funny because I talked to Jonathan, I had the book here with me already. I went and grabbed it again. But his other book, Power versus Force, right, which is what led me to David Hawkins, is and the Consciousness Map as well. Not having to force it, right? Not having to, and just letting the universe kind of open up for you, right? Versus you having to go doing all the things, right? I mean, Anna, talk to me a little bit about that. I know I've got it kind of jumbled up in there, but like, having that experience of the universe opening up, what is that to you? Like, talk a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's an aspect of surrender, and this has been a very powerful theme for me in my life, and something I consistently work on, because I've had like many people, I'm sure, the need to control the outcome, the overthinking of what could be, what it should be, what it should look like. And when you do that, you're ignoring what it potentially could be. And that might be so much better. And, this fighting, if you're constantly fighting something, you're resisting it, like, how can that possibly be meant to be that way? It isn't. And when you allow life to flow through you and you choose the path of least resistance and you surrender to what is, because you can't change what is reality. And so as you surrender to reality and what is here and now and true, then things just get easier. And I think a lot of that has to do with taking yourself also away from distractions and kind of going inwards and feeling what is right for you. And that's something that, the mind will try to take you away from that. We're trained so much to not listen to our intuition, I think. So we're here trying to listen to all these external things of what we should and shouldn't do. And then we have this false sense of where we should be at this moment in time, when really we're here. And if we just listen to where we are, it would just be so much easier and just this flow state. So, I mean, if you want to go like deeper into that, I just feel like, yeah, the flow of reality is perfect the way it is. And yeah, it's going to be really hard sometimes, and you're going to suffer, for example. But I always think, like, looking back on those experiences, there's so much you needed to have that experience because you came out the other side with new perspectives or growth or whatever it is that was necessary for you to move forward. So just surrendering to what is present, and even if it's painful, there will be something that comes out of that. That's how I feel about it anyway.
No, I love it. And I think that one thing that has definitely changed for me over the past couple of years is the word surrender in of itself, right? Michael Singer's, book, as well as this book itself, Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender, and various other teachers, right, that talk about surrendering. But I think that when most people put it in their minds of surrender, they see, all right, well, I'm in a battle, bro, and this is a fight for everything. Everything's a fight, and so if I surrender, that means I've given up, right? That means I'm waving the white flag. That means I'm laying down. But when you say surrender, what are you saying?
Yeah, I'm not saying to give up. I'm not saying to give up, because it's not about being like apathetic in any way. I think it's just accepting what is and working with what is. So if you really want something and there is a hurdle there, it's not about giving up and saying, oh, well, there's resistance there, so I'm not going to do it. But it's about taking the challenge, I guess you could say, and accepting that challenge and being with it, and not trying to, create stories about it that make your life even more hard and resisting further. Rather, you just accept it and allow the resistance or the challenge to be there, and see what you can learn from it, maybe, or see how you can grow from it, and not fight it, and not start to become a victim in your mind and create all these stories about something, and he shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done that, etc., etc. Rather, it's just, this is what it is. And how can I accept this with grace and surrender to it, and then see how I can progress forward? I guess that's kind of what I mean by surrender.
No, I mean, it's great. And I just think that people need to understand that surrender doesn't mean I'm laying down, people are going to walk all over me. And to your point, you get into an apathetic state and be like, oh, it doesn't even matter, bro. I don't even care. Yeah. Right. It's just, you kind of get into it. So, one of the things that's really important in the psychedelic space is set and setting, right? And I believe, that's one huge piece. The other huge piece is what Behold Retreats is doing, which is the integration, right? Which is hyper imperative. You talked about recreational use, which has its place too, right? I feel like, look, I mean, it's not awful. I mean, there's, people that drink all the time, right? Like I'd much rather not be drinking. I don't drink right now. So, I mean, to me, like that's toxic, right? Like that's literally toxic. And then you've also got this other piece now where you're building a kind of a pre-practice, and I want to hear more about that. But let's talk a little bit first, like, all right, I'm all in. I want to go to Behold Retreats. I think this is for me. Mm-hmm. What's the process? What's this start to look like?
Mm-hmm. Well, I always tell people first to do research. Really look at like why you want to do this, which medicines you want to work with, figure out where it comes from, talk to people who've experienced it. Like the research part, I do think is important. And then connecting with it, whatever you choose, usually people feel called to something. So whether it's ayahuasca or mushrooms or bufo, there's a calling. So I always advise people to kind of tune in and feel what's calling you. Once you've done sort of that kind of preparation, also becoming, aware of what's going on inside. So when we, for example, we have a discovery call as soon as someone puts in an application, and this will be with someone from our team, and we, go deep. We try to figure out your motivation to do this work, because we don't want to invite people who are not doing this for the right reasons. or who are very not ready, in a place that are not ready for this work. And so what does it mean, I guess, to be not ready? I think that means, well, it could mean many things, but to me, the biggest thing is if you haven't done any sort of, introspection, if you haven't looked at, your patterns, your behaviors, your history, and what you're looking to change. So a lot of thought, I think, should go into these things before you just jump into an experience. It's not about just getting high and seeing cool things and hoping for the best. It's about healing. It's about, awakening. It's about becoming more conscious. So we have this call and we sort of just evaluate, ask questions, where are you at? Have you done any of this work already? If a person has been through a lot, had like more of a difficult life, then we would also look at, what kind of support they have at home, if they're working with a therapist or a coach, if they have a good family or community or friends to support them. Medications, looking at that is really important because there's certain medications that are really dangerous to combine with psychedelics. So we look at all these factors, and there's a thorough intake form from a medical perspective as well as a psychological perspective. And that goes into the family history as well. So these are all looked at, and then we have a doctor who goes in and looks at the intake form, and then usually has a consultation if there's any red flags on the form that would pose any sort of risk. And that could be from, like I said, this physical level, interaction wise with the medicine, but also from a psychological level. If someone maybe is not ready for this work and it's going to be so overwhelming and trigger a bunch of things that it's dangerous for the psyche, because this is like deep, deep psyche work, right? So we have a pretty thorough intake process. And then from there, we try to have everyone sign up for coaching or therapy if they're not already being supported with someone. So we have a 7-week program. So we do like online self-study coaching. And this is really powerful tools and resources and activities, exercises to sort of get people in the place to prepare and then integrate after. And then sometimes people also get one-on-one coaching and therapy alongside that before and after their retreat. And then, at this point, the guest is probably aware of what medicine they want to work with, where in the world they want to go, if they prefer a private retreat versus a group retreat. And then, we sign them up. We're very supportive. So I usually have calls. I do always have calls with our guests before and after the retreats just to check in, help them, give them tools and resources. And then they're off on their journey. And then, we're in contact and just making sure that everyone's just doing well and really making like long-term changes. And it's really nice to be able to see the change in people after. It's like my favorite part of the job is just seeing that light after. It's amazing.
Nah, for sure, right? I think that any coaching or therapeutic space, or look, I mean, anytime you're helping another human out, feels good, right? Like, I mean, there's just a good feeling there, and when you're doing it to such a level and degree, kind of that you're doing it at, like it's almost palatable, right? Like you can like be like, yeah, that was a tasty one, right? Yeah. That was a tasty one. Not to be confused with the specific mushroom either. So this goes great with salad. I love the idea too that you're talking about here, right? So I'm just kind of walking through the process, and when you have these people go through and make the selection themselves because it called to them, I mean, that really sets that mentally up really nicely, right? Because it could be, are you familiar with the series, Nine Perfect Strangers? On
Yeah.
Netflix. Did you see that? I mean, let's talk about that in a minute too. So the whole idea too is like, all right, well, man, this was called to me. This was meant to be. This is natural, yada yada, right? Versus, hey, take this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I think, right. And because like, I don't know what's going on. But like these people kind of done some research. They talked to other people. They've gotten down in the nitty gritty of it. And then, so and again, like it's their choice to take this or, experience this specific substance. And I think that's a real key piece to me, if I'm outside looking in, I think that's really, really cool that you're doing it that way, becoming aware of what's going on inside, right? What's your motivation? So this 7-week process, right? We talked before this, you're basically priming the mind, right? I'm not sure if you're familiar with Neville Goddard, just kind of like the idea of like, getting your mind filled with like, really, what is it you're trying to accomplish, right? Because, and I don't know the specifics of what happens in there. And again, like, I'm just talking about, kind of a personal experience of like, priming the mind, getting yourself in the space, doing the work. And then it's like, you throw in the psychedelic experience. I'm not familiar with like, ibogaine, bufo, and all these others. I'm familiar with others, but like, it's like taking a sledgehammer to it, right? Just be like, or a bat, be like, there you go, right? Here's all the things you've been looking for. They're all inside. They're super like ready for you if you're ready for them. And like, here you go. And you're like, oh shit, it is all right there, right? And it's all within me, and like it's always been here, and that kind of thing. So I think that's super cool. I love that you're watching out for trauma, right? Because again, if like here, a red flag would be, I don't know, I'm not a psychologist, but like, hey, here's some trauma. Oh, we're going to add some gasoline to that, right? It's basically what you're doing. We're like, hey, you're already a ball of fire. How would you like to be like, an atomic mass, right? It's kind of what you're doing there. So, look, those are people that just aren't psychologically ready for something that intense, right? Because it's going to be intense. I think even like a nominal dosage is going to be intense. Yeah. The 7-week program, one-on-one or group. Can you just give me like, I don't know, what's a group session look like? And that's why I brought up Nine Perfect Strangers, right? Like, I mean, does it look something like that, or is it a little bit different?
A little bit different, of course. The groups settings, it's quite beautiful because people just immediately bond and connect and find each other in themselves. So it's a beautiful experience. And in the group setting, there will be, ceremonies are done together. So everyone's, for example, in ayahuasca, drinking at the same time in the same space. And then there's activities, integration activities. So that could be yoga, it could be breath work, it could be sharing circles, it could be all numerous types of things. And then there's alone time. So, you're not forced to be with people if you've had a big experience and you'd rather go and hug a tree, So it is a very gentle experience, and it's quite nice in groups because people just mirror off each other and they tend to support each other a lot and help each other work through, is this nice relatability of the human condition. And so it can be quite beautiful to have a small group. We don't do big groups because the energy is it's just too much. When things are coming out and being released and all sorts of things are happening in ceremony, it can get really messy, and you can start to pick up other people's energy, like this transference, and can be quite distracting. And so we always do small groups, and that way people have their choice to kind of take the time they need for themselves. And a lot of people like to have meals with each other and just be there for each other. It's a very nice, compassionate space, I think.
Nice. I think it's great that, you've got that set and setting, and you've got people there that are supporting each other. And again, not just a bunch of people. Like, I can go all the way back to my teenage days, right? Like, hey, let's all hang out and do a bunch of acid with each other with this group of people that nobody knows, right? And there's a whole bunch of dynamics in there that's just like, oh, I didn't know that person was going to say some of that crazy shit what did you just say? Right. And like, so being in a place that's just kind of ramshod without doing a lot of this other work that you're doing really just makes it potent and powerful. So, again, really, really enjoying that. So, all right, well, I signed up. I'm coming in. Like, why am I signing up? Like, what are some reasons that people are signing up and coming in and doing this?
Yeah, I would say that there's maybe two major subsets, and of course, everywhere in between and both. But I would say the first are those who are really looking to heal some unresolved traumas, some really deep anxiety or depression, things like this. That's, I would say, a big group of people. And whether this trauma comes from childhood, whether it's intergenerational, whether it's from something that happened in the recent years, whatever it is, this is something that people come in and they're ready to face it. They're ready to get in, they're ready to break the patterns, they're ready to establish better relationships, they're ready to treat themselves with more self-love, forgiveness. These are big themes. And then you have someone who maybe is doing all that as well, but is also, or maybe just doing, coming in to awaken a deeper purpose. They're curious about themselves, the nature of themselves, of spirituality, of God and the universe, and they feel this deep calling. They know something's missing. They're like, okay, I made it here. I've done real well, but I know that there's somewhere else I could be and feel. And so I would say that the majority fall in, both these categories. I think everyone has a bit of both, to be honest, but some have more prominent, focus on the healing and the trauma, where some are more focused on the awakenings and enlightenment type of path.
Sure. I mean, so I get it, right? I think that it's interesting, right? One thing that I might have expected to hear, given that this process is oftentimes, for leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs, right? That productivity, something like that, peak experience didn't make it into what you just said. So, and I'm totally cool with that. I know that I do breath work, teaching breath work and whatnot. And there's a lot of people that, are faced with anxiety and depression, that are faced with this unresolved trauma, and how that gets, resolved through breath work and other energy practices. And then, like, you throw in, they call it magic mushrooms for a reason, right? Right? Like, pow, how about that? Right. And then, like, it's kind of, again, it's a hyper acceleration of kind of the process.
Yeah.
Right. And especially even in the something's missing aspect of it, right? Be like, I've always known this was here type of thing, but I've never been able to get to it. I remember talking to a friend of mine who was like, I know it's all within me. I just don't know. Like, I feel like there's some trigger missing, right? Mm-hmm. There's some knob or something that needs to be turned so I can access it. I feel like I'm being kept away from the truth of who I am.
Yeah, these blockages, people feel them. They know that there's energetic blocks that are stopping them from reaching their full potential. And so when you do say things like productivity or, this type of skill set for this, people who are wanting to increase their performance, this is, I would say, definitely, let's say a happy outcome of this type of work, because when you are in alignment with your values, when you are, processing your emotions in a healthy way, when you're relating to yourself and others in a better way, you will become more productive. And it won't be productive based, motivated by guilt or shame or fear. It's productivity motivated by love and excitement and purpose. And that's exciting, because when you start to equate productivity with your worth, and create a story about that makes you feel guilty when you're not being productive, or this is like a very common theme as well, that's not helpful, and that's not going to make you more productive, and then it's just a vicious cycle. And so to be motivated by purpose, to be motivated by having this open heart, I think, all these other great things in performance and in work and life and relationships, and they just come naturally because you're just vibing higher. You're in a different state where life is just easier.
Yeah, like, I mean, to your point, right? I think that once you're in full alignment with like purpose, values, you're quite literally bodily buzzing, right? Because you're like, everything is working just like as it's supposed to. And it is work, but it becomes like this ease of work, right? It becomes easier to do. There's like an ease about yourself and going into it too. Like I feel great. Like, look, I have a great job. I'm surrounded by great people, but like still Monday comes around. I'm like, tense. I'm like, I don't wanna, right? And you're like, all right, fine. I'll go do the thing. It's okay. And I'm going to do it. I tell myself my own little stories. Like, I'm doing this in alignment somehow. I ratchet it into a purpose and some other stuff. But like, if you could do that and it's natural, right? And if I don't have to force myself to tell this story, it's like, you're like, oh wow, this is great. And there's something to it, right? It doesn't mean that it's, easy, doesn't mean that there's not a lot of work, doesn't mean there won't be hard spots, but there's purpose and there's something driving it. And like a big thing that got me into this space was the attachment of the heart mind, right? Like there's love over here, there's my mind over here, and like somewhere like you're supposed to keep them separate the whole time, like peanut butter and chocolate, right? Like never, and then all of a sudden they're combined. You're like, this is magical.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true.
Right?
So true. Peanut butter and jelly together.
Whatever you're doing with it, right? And so like you've always been told to kind of keep them separate, right? And to your point, I don't think you mentioned on here, I was listening to another podcast that you were doing, maybe you did talk about on yoga, like you can't make money doing that, right? You've always been told like these things, and that gets you, and they're being told to you by like your parents, teachers, whatever,
exactly.
Authority figures, right? People who have been there ahead of you, that'll be like, that you're like, I should trust what they're saying because I don't know. There's no reason why I should be trusting what they're saying too, right? Because like, I think the one question that always comes up for me when I'm talking to somebody, and you're like, would I want that person's life? Right? So if I don't want that person's life, why am I listening to anything that they're saying?
So true.
Right? Like, I mean, hey, you look like you've been grinding it out. You've got a shitty car. You hate your life and all these other things. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? Because that's what I want in my life, right? Because I want that. So I think that people make a huge mistake listening to people who they don't want anything to do. They don't even want anything those people got.
No.
Right?
No, I was going to ask you, what do you think that, I mean, there's so many reasons for that, but what do you think is like the main reason why people...
It's the authority figures, right? Like, I mean, I think it might have even served us, like, again, we can go back to, caveman days, be like, what, this would work well if we didn't have some type of educational system, if we didn't have books, if we didn't have anything else, then you apprentice with somebody, you learn by watching and doing. Like, I mean, come on. We learn from, we become our parents, whether or not we want to admit it, right? We kind of become like, God damn it, everything that like I am them, right? And you have no choice because you're surrounded by that, right? So, we look at, that's just kind of innate in us, right? I think you talked in the other episode about these, generational traumas. But it's not just generational trauma. It's just look, if you don't think, and I don't have any science anywhere that proves it or says anything about it, but like, if you don't think that your DNA doesn't have something other than, how to create a whole fucking body and make you breathe and do some other stuff, and it doesn't have something else in there that we haven't decoded like 40 billion lines of code yet, just because we don't have a CD player doesn't mean this isn't a CD, right? Like, I mean, so So there's more stuff in there than we are currently aware of. And I think that, especially again, like, you talk about kind of doing these ceremonial things, and like you go in there and like your body's resonating. There's all this information there that like you've never really tapped into before. And like once you go in, you start tapping into it, you're like,
What?
how did I get all this stuff? How do I have all this information? Yeah. Right. So I think the reason is like, it served us prior to technology, that we currently have now. And so it's ingrained in us to kind of follow the people that have gone before us because they kept us alive. Right. And I think that we do know that the brain and the mind is a pretty power hungry resource, and that it's going to take the easiest path to survival. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm.
For sure.
But we want those peak experiences. Like we're like, okay, survival's been cool for a while and I've been hanging out here for a long time. What else is available? Right. Cause
what's beyond the
right. And I like, look, courage, right? Tipping point is courage in letting go, right? In the map of consciousness, 200. Tipping point is courage. Once you have the courage to do anything that you believe you would like to be doing, mm-hmm. that goes against the grain, and then you don't catch in the fucking flames after you went and did it, yeah. You're like, oh, wait a second. What else could I be doing?
Exactly. The potential
is
completely limited.
Yeah. So that's, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna acknowledge, what you said about the, not thinking that we haven't inherited so much information from our ancestors, and how this actually can reflect in our behaviors and the way we see the world, but also even just like an overall sense of something can be so deep, this ancestral intergenerational traumas. Like this was something that was so new to me until I actually had ayahuasca. And then, woof, did I see the ancestral trauma. And then I got into this whole world about how to heal that. And the fact that we've sort of ignored this, and how we can say, oh yeah, I got my hair and my eye color and maybe my sense of humor from my grandmother, but of course not. I wouldn't have gotten the effects of the trauma from my great grandfather who was in a war and whatever. And it's amazing when you look at this and really see, how much of that information we carry and how it actually impacts our daily life. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, 100%. So one of the things, you guys are doing now at Behold Retreats is you've got your process to get into it. Like, all right, you're in, we're going through, boom, done. There's some integration work, the follow-up stuff, which is nice. I'm going to leave that one alone for right now. But I want to talk about the piece that says, I'm not so sure. Yeah. I might not be ready. The water's not, Goldilocks, right? This isn't going to work out for me. Mm-hmm. But you have a process now that says, hey, let's do some other work maybe before this piece. Tell me a little bit about what that's about.
Yeah. We're really excited about this because, after speaking with so many people who want to do this work and realizing that there is a huge need for people and a huge space for people who are curious about the work and they want to do it and they know that they will be ready one day, but they're not sure how to prepare. And some people are going to need more than a few weeks of preparation, right? So for those people, which are many, many, many people, we've just put together our first pre-medicine retreat. So this is bringing awareness and to the types of healing that can be done and the types of work that can be done from the mental, emotional bodies, and getting in touch with ourselves, getting in touch with our traumas and our emotions and becoming aware. And through this work, the more of this work we do, the more and more we can be ready to have one of these psychedelic experiences. because even if you think that you're ready, you're probably not ready. Like, I have to say, my first ayahuasca experience, so I'm in this field, so I'm day in, day out helping people prepare. But before, when I had my first ayahuasca experience, I was doing the work. I was, but I have, we all, like everyone, we have blind spots. So I had this huge blind spot, and it was in my emotional body. And I wasn't, because I have such a strong mind and I see the world, I'm like really lucky in the sense that I'm very optimistic, I'm very positive. So it's very easy for me to create great stories about painful events. So that's great. But then there's like this huge bypass that happens there with the emotional processing. So yeah, well, I could tell myself everything was great. That's not what's happening in the subconscious at all. In fact, I'm doing the opposite. I'm harming myself because I'm not allowing painful emotions and I'm not dealing with traumatic things that have happened. So just becoming aware of that fact and learning how to deal with this. And everyone has their own blind spots and different for everyone. So if I had a pre-medicine retreat, for example, where I was shown these things, maybe my first ayahuasca experience wouldn't have been as challenging and difficult to navigate and hard to integrate after. I'm not going to lie. It was really like, I needed a lot of support. And I'm someone who on the outside, and even to myself, thought I'm great. Like, I haven't had a traumatic life. I'm happy. I have this personality. And then yet here I am. And I've never been more humbled in my entire life than meeting ayahuasca. So, I'm really glad we're doing this because there's the best investment you can make in yourself is in yourself doing this work. So if you're not ready for the psychedelics just yet, that doesn't mean you can't really prepare yourself to get even better of an experience and go deeper and be able to handle it in a different way and make these like bigger changes after. So yeah.
I think that's super huge too, right? Because if you come from, and look, I'm not 100% white privileged, but I'm white privileged enough to know that there's white privilege out there, right? If you come from 100%, toe the line, do all the right things, get into the right schools and all this other stuff, there's a mind piece in there about like the mushrooms and how they're bad for you. I was in there. I know you're supposed to say no to drugs, all these other things, right? If you come from that space, you might not be ready at all for it, right? To your point, right? Let alone like ayahuasca, right? Like, cause, you said, you were like, you dabbled with the shrooms, and you did, I'm sure, some other things in between. And then you still got your ass kicked by ayahuasca is what I'm hearing you say. Right. And look, I mean, very similar to you in the fact that like, all right, well, it's been pretty good. I can see myself get my ass kicked too. But, the other piece I'm going to say out there is like, I was lucky in that my mom, I grew up from a hippie heritage, right? Like, so like all this stuff is like, I don't know. It's literally in my DNA, right? Like, so I think that it's important to know, again, that you might need to do some pre-work before you can get into the work. And especially, again, like, some of the stuff that you're doing, with the energy stuff and all this and the breath work, I think it's really important to experience that alone. Kind of see what that can do. Cause I think that there might even be, and I can correct me if I'm wrong, there might even be a space too that where you say, all right, they might get everything that they need out of doing the pre-work.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's pretty cool. One question I did have is, so the integration, right? To your point, it's cool if you've got a support system, but Sara, like I have 1 week to come in here to do this retreat, and then next week I got to go back to work. Am I?
Yeah.
Right. So what's that going to look like?
I don't advise it. I just don't advise it.
You got to quit.
You gotta quit your job. You got to quit your life. You got to move to a farm and go save yourself. No, it's it's one of these things where it's always good to at least have a few days. Mm-hmm. Like it's so like again, naively in my first ayahuasca, I remember calling Jonathan the next day and being like, I think I'm going to need a few days off work. Like I really like,
I'm not going to be able to make it back.
Really underestimated this. Yeah.
Right. That's funny.
And, you know, it is one of these things where you're going to have to go back to your old triggers, the old energy, because you went on this amazing journey. You've changed, but everyone else in your life is still the same. Right. So now it's about holding yourself accountable, and it's about staying on your path. And when those triggers come up, so one of the most, I think, effective integration tools is evaluating, especially in the first couple of weeks, because that's when you're like high state of neuroplasticity and you're still kind of in this glow, you know, you feel it, you feel the experience. So you have to use it. And one of the most powerful ways I found to do this is every day, you know, look at your old triggers, look at the energy that is the same, the job, the whatever it is, and evaluate them with now this new perspective or this new feeling, and see how you can change and see how you can be different and see how you can look at it differently and then behave differently and hold yourself to that. It's about commitment. You know, it is about, it's not, psychedelics aren't this magic pill, you know, and unfortunately, so a lot of people still, is a huge misconception, is that you're going to go and you're going to be healed and life is going to be amazing and you're never going to have to work hard to be happy in your life. But that's not true. And the truth is I think psychedelics open, like, it's like they create this pathway. They open the doors. They show you the way. They're like, this is what you want to be, the person you want to be. You got to do this. And then you actually have to do it.
Damn it.
Yeah, you actually have to do it. I know, right? But once you do, it becomes easier and it becomes this flow thing. And then the old triggers, the old job, the old people that were causing you so much stress before, they're going to be different. And then at that point, you can make the decision to change your course of your life. You can change. That's the beauty. You can just make changes. If you don't like something, you can change it. I mean, you can't like change who your parents are, for example, but you can change the way you look at your relationship with them. You can change the way you react to them. And, you know, these are things that, yeah, it's important to know going back, that you will have to face them. And that's why I do believe taking some space, if you can, is important. And not only, and if you can't take the time off, for example, which maybe not everyone's in the position to take off work or to take more time away from their family, for example, but it's a practice in setting boundaries and taking space alone, you know, and giving yourself permission to not see someone, to not do your best at work for a day and just take some rest time. You know, it's about creating space for yourself in this transformation.
Yeah, awesome. So I mean, you're gonna need a lot of I mean, it's called integration work for a reason, right? Like, it's not like, you know, hey, I got the certificate of getting my mind blasted at this retreat, and that was great. So, like, what did you bring back with you? So, listen, I could probably talk about this stuff all day long and go all over the place with it. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of time today, and you probably don't either. But I want to say thank you so much for hopping on today. Really exciting time for, I think, the world right now with psychedelics making this big thing. I didn't even bring up, like, I just saw a report yesterday that was released just on, you know, some huge study, right, on the psychedelics and kind of the benefits and like where it's at, and 26 different substances. I've only been playing with 5. Anyways, so I kid almost, not really, but kind of. So where can people go to find out more about Sara, and where can people go to find out more about Behold Retreats?
Well, first off, thank you so much for this. It's been a really nice conversation, and I'm also very excited about where we're going with psychedelics. So, you can find us at www.behold-retreats.com. And there you will find all sorts of information about our retreats. But not only that, we have a lot of information there, like webinars and blogs about all sorts of topics and helping you prepare and, just educate yourself on the topic. So you can find out more there. And,
Awesome, Sara. Thanks for being on today.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
Really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Spiritual Dope Podcast. Stay connected with us directly through spiritualdope.co. You can also join the discussion on Facebook, Spiritual Dope, and Instagram at spiritual_dope. If you would like to speak with us, send us an email through brendan@spiritualdope.co. And as always, thank you for cultivating your mindset and creating a better reality. This concludes the most thought-provoking part of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay fully up to date. Until next time, be kind to yourself and trust your intuition.